In today's show, we're going to talk about Microsoft Flow and the Excel Online connector. And we're going to do two things. One of them is brand new, I think, is we're going to talk about how to do dynamic files. So sometimes you want to do for a selected file and you want to have it be dynamic. So I finally figured out how to do that. So I'm pretty excited to show that. And we'll do that in the first part of the video because that's new to a lot of people. And then after that, we're going to go dive through the Excel actions and just talk about some of the gotchas, odata queries, that type of stuff for those of you that are kind of new to using Excel overall. So should be fun. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with Power Apps 911, those guys. And today, we're going to dive into Microsoft Flow and the Excel Online connector. And so really what we're going to do here is there's kind of two parts. I've been fighting with it for the last week or so for some different customer projects. And so I thought I'd go and document this for you guys and for myself, so remember how to do this later. But just kind of go through some of the nuances. And the first one was I was really struggling with, I want to be able to dynamically work with a file. So I want to be able to let this customer go put a file out into SharePoint or OneDrive, right? Any Excel file they want in a certain data structure, but it might have different names depending on the day of the week or the month because of some reporting stuff. But it's always going to have the same table structure. So they're going to put that file out there. I then want them to select the file out with the action, run a flow for a selected file, and then have it trigger. And so what I was really struggling with was that dynamic file name and the table names type of portion. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through that. We're going to start there with the new concept because best I could tell from what I did from my Googling and Binging was that no one had really solved it. I don't know if no one cared to solve it or if it was really hard, but it's weird how it works. So we're going to go through that one first. Yay! And then once we kind of get that file pulled in and we talk through that, then for those of you that the Excel connector is new to, I'm going to walk you through some of the things like the odata queries, the pagination limits, and some of the little things that I think will make your life a lot easier as you come up to speed with wanting to be able to get Excel files. But I thought this customer's use case was perfect. They run weekly reports out of their time system. We grab those files, we throw them out to SharePoint, someone selects and runs it, and then we process that file by getting the table and then getting all the rows and then doing stuff. We create data in CDS. We have all kinds of fun. So I'm not going to show you their flow, but at least I'm going to give you all the foundational things that I had to learn so that I could build that flow for them so you can build your own. All right? All right, that's enough of the blah, blah, blah. Let's just switch over to my desktop and take a look. Okay, so over here on my desktop, first thing I was going to show you my Excel file. Real complicated, right? Just got a few rows, or 1,200 rows, but only 4 columns. And I didn't want to really get into the data size too much, so I just kind of made something that was large enough to show some of the concepts. Anyway, most important thing is that this data you want to import has to be in a table, right? So you can see by mine, I clicked on table design, and my table name is table 1. I made it a table. If you have data or you want to grab some cells and they're not currently in a table, you can highlight the cells, and then you can come over here and say format as a table, choose a style, and then choose whether or not it has headers, and boom, that's how you make a table. So I do not want this table though, so I'm just going to say Control Z. But that is how you work with getting a table. It has to be a table, and maybe you know the table name, maybe you don't, but that's the first step. Okay, so I made that file. I then went and uploaded it into a SharePoint document library. Everything I'm going to show you here works the same for a SharePoint document library or a OneDrive, so it doesn't matter which of those two places you're storing the file. I went and confirmed that this morning for you. So that'll all be the same. But then what I want to do is I want to be able to import this. So if I click on this little critter, doop, and then I do a flow, you should see that I see the different flows, and so we have some out here, and that's going to let us choose this file and process it. So instead of using one of these, let's go build our own. So I'm going to go over here to Flow, and I'm going to say Create, and it is Power Automate, but I refuse to say Power Automate, so we're going to keep calling it Flow, but I know I'm wrong. It's okay. So we're going to say Instant Flow, and then down here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, how about for a selected file in SharePoint. So that's going to be our trigger, and then we're just going to give it a name. We're going to call it Video Demo, right? Right. So we're going to say Create. Okay. So then now it's like, all right, well, what document library do you want me to tie this flow to? So I'm going to choose my document libraries. I'm going to hit the drop down here, and we should see Power Apps videos right there. Perfect. And then I'm going to hit the drop down again and do the library. All right? Because this portion isn't dynamic. You can't make the flow trigger be dynamic, but that's not what we want. We want to be able to upload different files and make those dynamic. So then now what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, I want a new step, and if we type in, or there you go, there's Excel Online right there. And so the first thing we really need to do is get the name of the tables. So we would do get tables. So if we do this, and then we say, all right, what location you want me to look in? We scroll all the way down here. Somewhere is SharePoint Power Apps Videos. And then the document library again. And who doesn't think that Flow should just know where I'm connected to, right? Wouldn't it be nice? And so for the file, notice here, it says select an Excel file through the file browse. So what's really obnoxious is that this thing does not take normal inputs. So for example, if we hit the little drop down, and then I go to the Excel demo folder in there, I'd be able to see, oh, look, it's called master video. And so it puts Excel demo master video in there for me. So when you see that, you're like, oh, that's awesome. Then I should just be able to dynamically type in whatever I want there and it would work. I'm going to save you all the failed Flow runs. There is no way to dynamically type in a name or create a name or a string that will make this thing happy. I tried like 7 different little this and that's. It doesn't work. So here's the thing that I finally figured out that's going to change your life, hopefully. What you need to do is that this thing, it doesn't tell you this, but what it really wants is it wants the identifier of the file. And the only way to get the identifier, right, because if we look at dynamic content, we have the ID, but not the identifier. They're different. Sound like the same thing? They're different. So what you're going to do is after for selected file, we're going to come back up here and we're going to go to SharePoint. There's SharePoint. And then we're going to say get file properties right here. So get file property, not get files, right? There was a second one there called get files. Don't use that one or you'll be confused because it doesn't work. And so then I'm going to find my same library again. Thanks, Flow, for the help. And then where's my documents? Right there. And then what ID do I want? I want the ID of the selected file. So they selected a file. I need to turn around and get that file, which seems weird because you should already have it, but you don't have all the fields. But now if you come down here, what you can do is from get file properties action, there is dynamic content called, not ID, ID doesn't help you, identifier. And basically this is a big old long GUID that identifies the file for SharePoint, and that's the thing that Excel wanted. So this was the secret. This was the big aha moment, was when I finally figured out that it wanted an identifier, and now that I know it wants an identifier, I was able to use this to get it. So that feels real good to me. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit save. Okay, and after it's saved, now if we go back over here, what I should be able to do is select my file. And notice right now, if I click on flows, you don't see any, right? I'm trying to think of things you guys are going to ask me about in the comments. So that's because I haven't selected a file yet. So I have to go select the file. And then now there is our video demo. Whew, I was afraid it wasn't going to show up in time. So there we go, we have a video demo. And so then you have to give it all the API permissions. Like, yes, I allow you to use my permissions and all this. So say continue and then run flow. Okay, and so then now that it's running, what we're going to do is we're going to go back over here and do okay. And so you can see that it is running. So I'm going to click on that run. Flow ran successfully. Sounds good. And so if we go down here and get tables, hey, look at that. There's our table name. Woohoo, woohoo. So now that we have our dynamic table name, we're in good shape. Oh, I'm so excited when a plan comes together. So now that you've got the tables, what you're going to do is you're going to go down here and do a new step, Excel Online. And so then now you'd say list rows present in a table. Boop. And then for your location, once again, we got to go find that library. So Power App Videos, document library is documents, file. Well, we know that we can not use the ID, but we can use, where is it? Our friend, the identifier, right? This is one of those ones where you're like, why are you so excited? It's because it took me hours to figure this out. And you guys just get to jump right to the end solution of how to get this file. So sorry if I'm overzealous here. Anyway, so, and then for the table, what you can do is because it can't dynamically grab the table name from a dynamic file, makes sense. You can say enter a custom value. And so then if you do, you can either say enter dynamic content, and then look, there is the table name from the get tables. Now the downside of this is when you do it this way, now it put this whole thing in apply to each, because the idea is that get tables returned a set of tables. Now in this case, we only had one table in there, but because of that, that's why it's triggering this apply to each, because it could have had 5 tables in there. And so it would do this step for each one. So in the customer solution, I only wanted to allow one table. So I kind of went and iterated on this concept a little bit, and so that I didn't have to worry about it. And I added in a condition in there. If the number of tables was not equal to 1, then terminate the flow because the file wasn't good, right? I only wanted 1. So now that you understand kind of why this is happening, you can decide how you want to handle if there's multiple tables or whatnot. Because you can't really have dynamic number of tables and dynamically structured tables, because that's going to get you into trouble, because you do need to know all the column names of all your tables. But so now that I've done this, I can say, all right, list rows present in a table, and that all looks good. So then now if we said save, and remember the first time I didn't hit test, I should have pointed this out to you guys. The reason is because you can't do the selected file trigger in test, right? So you can't say, I'll do this on my own for the test. So you had to go manually trigger it like I showed you. But now that I've manually triggered it once, right, you can never perform the trigger action this way. But now I have that run, so I don't have to keep going over there and selecting it in SharePoint anymore. So now we can say save and test. And then what should happen here is after a few seconds, right, but we got our tables again, boop. And then down here under apply to each, it said, all right, do that. And then list rows present in table. And so then if we were to look, we would see that we have a whole bunch of rows here. And so then now we can do dynamic things with our rows, right? We can go create new items in our SharePoint list, or in my case, in the common data service. You have the ability, because now you have a streaming data set of those rows. Okay, so that was the cool new part. Now, what I want to do now is I want to kind of go a little further down this rabbit hole, because one thing you might realize is that even though I only had I have 1,000, 1,200-ish items in my thing, it only returned the first 256 rows. Is it like delegation and Power Apps all over again? It's not. But what you have to do is start to kind of learn that. So now we're going to kind of shift gears a little, right? We've done the dynamic stuff for those of you that wanted to learn the new thing. And so then now those of you that just want to keep going, let's keep going with some of the fun. And so the first thing I really want to find out is I want to figure out how many rows it returned. I know it only returned 256, but I got to prove that to you, right? So what I'm going to do down here is, how about this? We'll go down here. We'll say, and get tables that got the rows present. And so then we'll say add an action. And then what we'll do is there is a, we'll use compose. There you go. So we'll use compose. And compose just kind of lets us run formulas or run things right here. And so one of the expressions in Flow is called length. And so with length, if I pass it the dynamic content of value from this previous step, list rows present, it's getting the value from list rows in a previous step, what it'll do is it's going to count the number of rows in theory. Let's make sure I got this right. So we'll say okay, we'll say save, and then we'll click on test again, and then save and test. And after a few seconds, it came back. And so if we go to our compose action, you can see the inputs was 5, so it only came back with 5 rows present in my table. Interesting. So let's go open our Excel file and make sure that's correct. Master video. Oh, look, it wasn't even the file I thought. So there's 5. Okay, all right. It was right, I was wrong. That happens. No problem. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our document library, back to our Excel demo folder. And then I'm going to grab the larger version of this file. So that's master video. I want master giant. Let me pull that over 1 second. Okay, grab my file. So I'm going to paste it right here. So then now we have master giant out here, and it is syncing out. It is sunk. And there it is. So then now we'll just run it again, right? So I'm going to select this file, and this is getting you to see a different file run. And so then we're going to say video demo, and then run my flow. We'll go over here to run history. We'll go back a screen, and that one is running. It ran successfully. And if we go to compose, there you go. So it got 256 rows, even though if we went over here and looked at master giant, it has 1,236 rows, right? And you could scroll all the way to the bottom to see it. I think you trust me to know there's not there. So then now the question becomes is how do I deal with this? Great question. So let's go back over here to our flow and let's edit our flow. And so one of the things I didn't even know was here is on this list rows present in table, if you hit the ellipses and you go to settings, then you get this thing called pagination. So then down here, we're going to say, I want to turn this on. And so then now you can control the number of files or not number of files, number of lines it's going to return. And so by default, it was pulling back 256. And so if I change this to 10,000, say done, what's going to happen is it's going to get those back in chunks of 256, but it's going to go until it crosses that boundary. So what we should be able to do is say test again and do this. There you go. So the run finish. And notice it took 25 seconds to run. So it wasn't just a little bit longer. It took quite a bit longer. But look at our compose step. 1,235 rows, right? That was the number of rows in our file. It got them all back. So edit again. This pagination setting is pretty important to you guys understand if you're starting to see limits. And what's really interesting is if I set this to say 500, let's just do that. So if I set it to 500 and say done, it's actually not going to get back 500 files, which I found, or 500 lines. I found that really weird. But if we do test, save and test, it's actually going to pull back 512 because I told you it pulls back in 256 chunks until it gets over the number that you told it to. So then that is how we should be able to, if you kind of wanted to pare it down, you have to kind of understand that 256 increment, right? We should see 512. Now, I haven't tried this, so I apologize for going off script here, but I think if we come over here and then we could go to advanced options. And so then I think where it says top count, let's change this to 500. I don't know what this is going to do, honestly. We're going to find out. And I'm going to pretend like I expected it to do whatever it does. If you just want to know the truth. So we're going to click on that. Ready for the big reveal? I am. Click on this, we'll go on compose step, and it only pull back 500. So what's interesting about what would happen here, I actually understand what happened. I told you that. Anyway, what happens here is that this action fetched 512, and then it pared it down and only actually pulled out the first 500. Like I use a very similar concept in other scenarios where I know it's pulling back 10 rows, but I only want run. So the action went and got 10, but it only returned into the flow the one that it needed. So that's the same thing that happened here. Is it went and got all 512, but then it just kind of pared them down for you. Okay, but this little link thing, right? This is kind of a handy little trick because it does. Sometimes I use it to count the length of a string, but in this case, it's counting the number of rows that are coming back from that action, which makes your testing and troubleshooting a lot easier. So I put these types of things into these flows just for the building stages, right? And then once the flow is built and done and ready to run forever, then I pull all this out. Like I'll literally go in and rename this, I'll be like compose, and I'll be like delete after testing. And so then that way I know before I actually launch this flow into production, I'll come back and delete all these steps because I don't need them to make my flow run. I just needed these as sanity checks as I was going through. So there's a lot of that stuff that I do, okay? But so that now that you kind of understand that, the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is what if you wanted to filter this data? And that was what I had to end up doing in my customer's case. So this becomes another little fun thing. So if we go back over here, let's not go that way. We'll just open up the Excel file. And so let's say that we want to find only the records for me or for Chewy. Let's do Chewy. So there's a column named name and we have Chewy. So what you're going to do is you can go in here and you can write an OData query. We're going to get rid of this whole top thing. I don't want any confusion from that. Sorry, we're going to change pagination back to a bigger number. I just don't want multiple things for us to have to think about why multiple things happen. Okay, so what I want to do here is I'm going to filter the data. And I'm going to say name, which is the name of the column, equals, but you don't do an equal sign like you want. You use OData syntax, which is EQ, and then you're going to do Shane Young. And notice that is in single quotes. So that's how you delineate a string in an OData query. And so if we hit save now, and then we go over here and we do another test. Notice I don't bother changing the test every time. I don't care which one it picks one. Just run one and make me happy. So then my flow ran successfully. And if we go down here, what we should see is we had 255 rows, right? And we should have gotten all of them. So we know that in theory, there is 255 instances of good old Shane in that particular thing. And you could scroll through the data here and be like, oh, yay, look, you could count them if you really wanted. Sounds like a lot of work. But so you have this ability to do OData queries. Now, things you need to understand about this OData query though is it can be dynamic. So for example, I could come back up here. Let's do this. We'll make a variable. So we'll say variable and initialize a variable. And so then var person value. I don't know. I'm just making up stuff here. All right, I'm off script again. I apologize. There you go, string. And then in this string, we're just going to put in Shane Young. Oh, like that. And so then we could come back down here to our apply to each. And then in our filter query, we'd say name, EQ, delete that out, and then var person. And what's weird though is you actually have to put this in single quotes as well. I found that really, I don't know, it confused me the first time, so I thought I'd point that out to you. But so then that lets you do that, because in that customers flow, I go and fetch a dynamic value of the last thing that we processed, so I can't, and make sure that it doesn't correspond or whatever, right? There's no conflict. So that's the type of thing you might do, is you might have a dynamic way of getting the value. And so this could be any type of dynamic content down here. So you can, as long as it builds out to a proper OData string. Also, I'll put down below a link to some OData resources. If you're into that stuff, you probably get it. If you don't, then there's some cheat sheets out there. Also keep in mind that a lot of these OData queries are very finicky. And I don't think the action supports all the different types of evaluation types for the Excel one. So make sure you're kind of looking out for those challenges. Another one that I could not overcome. So if you look at my Excel file, I have a work type with a space in the name. I'll save you all the banging my head, issues. There is no way to have a dynamic or have the column name in an OData query for the Excel connector, right? This is not an OData problem. This is the Excel connector bug, issue, shortcoming, working as designed, whatever you want to call it. But it does not support column names with spaces in them. I tried all the different iterations. I couldn't get that working. So in my customer's example, I'm like, hey, that one field that you have called blah, blah, you've got to delete that space out before you save the table. I just couldn't overcome that one. So that's making sure that the data comes in. The data, it's gotta have a table. It's gotta be in a table. It's gotta have columns without spaces. If you want to do an OData query. If they didn't want to query against it, then I absolutely could use that data elsewhere, right? All of this, though, does bring up another one of the shortcomings of the dynamic methodology. Is right now, if I wanted to go through and create something from this list rows present in table, it doesn't understand how to do that right now because the file is dynamic and it's like, I don't know what you mean with all this dynamicness. So what you can do, though, I think, is you can come in here. And so we're going to change this to be hard-coded for a second, right? I know what the file structure is going to look like. So I'm going to go back in here to Excel demo. And then we're going to use the master video one because that's the smaller file. And then we're going to change the table, right? We should be able to hit X here. And then, oh, there's our table. So now it understands the data, right? The connector's not confused because you're not passing it dynamic stuff. So then now you can come down here and be like, hey, add an action. And then we'll do SharePoint. And then we're going to say create an item. And where do you want to create that? We're going to do it in our Power Apps video, of course. And then in our list, it's called Excel something. Excel import demo, creative name. And so then for person name here, now you can see that list rows present in a table shows up. So once again, if you're like, wait a minute, why am I not seeing my list rows present in the table? It's because you skipped the part where I told you to change it back to a hard-coded file. But so then now you can come in here and be like, okay, well, so you should be from the name column. And then it automatically put the apply to each in there. Thank you, Flo. That's very helpful. Hours they worked. And so then I'm going to be like, oh, well, that didn't come through right. Dates they worked. Oh, that does come through. So work date. And then type of work, that will show up here. But hours they worked. So what's happened is over my SharePoint side, this is a number column, but it doesn't understand. Like it's like you don't have any numbers in your data. And so, which is fair. Because what happens is that Excel file is bringing in my number column, the number that had like the different hours for people. It's bringing that in as text. So what I have to do is I have to be able to convert that. So if you come up here to the hours they work, you're going to go to expression, and we're going to use the integer function, which takes a, actually we're not going to use integer, we're going to use float because the numbers might have decimals. So we're going to use float, and we're going to say, all right, float, I want you to run, and I'm going to grab the dynamic content. And so then over here, it's not going to show it to me because it's being a rude face. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to go right down here. I'm going to do hours worked. And so that's what I need to put in the other function. Now, usually what can happen is if I can kind of click on this, hit Control C. And so then we go back up here to float, and inside my expression, I'm going to paste this in. Ooh, see this curly at the end? I don't need that, so I'm going to hit backspace. And then we go all the way forward. I'm going to hopefully edit out that coughing. And then I'm going to say the ampersand or the @ symbol and that. So it should be float items apply to each to, which is the name of the supply to each. And in there, I want to pull the hours worked column. All right, I got rid of the curly at the end and close parentheses. So now if we say update, that looks good. And of course, because it's annoying, it went ahead and put 2 of them here. So I'm going to delete the wrong one. That looks good. We're going to clean this up. And so then now that we've got this create item step configured successfully, yay us, go back up here. And then we're going to be like, hey, I was just kidding. For table, I want you to use the table from earlier, right? So where'd that table name go? Boop. And for file, nope, I don't want any of that. I'm going to delete that out. And so then for the file, I'm going to be like, hey, remember that identifier thing? And so then now everything's back to dynamic, but it is good, right? Because your column names can't be dynamic. That doesn't work. But this, the file name does. So I think that feels good. So I'm going to hit save. And then just to make sure that I'm getting the right file, because I don't want to do the 1,000 rows, I want to do the small amount of rows, we're going to go back over to Power Apps real quick. Or not Power Apps, this is called SharePoint. And so then we're going to go to Master Video, because that's the small file. And then we'll just say, hey, run my flow again. Flow. There's video demo. And then we're going to run the flow. And so then we'll go back over here. We'll go back a page. And we should see that run. It's happening right as we speak. Nice, nice. And so we got our tables. Oh, it couldn't get our table. What's it mad about? So it got the right file. So I think flow is just being a grumpy butt. So let's test that here. I'm going to go back over here again and be like, hey, you. Let's run that flow a second time. Flow, video demo. Run the flow again. All right, let's go back over here. Let's do another refresh. Oh, that one just straight up failed. And so why did this one fail? This is actually one of the things I didn't want you to see. Syntax error. Interesting. But it did get the tables that time. Well, let's go figure out what I did. Name, EQ. Oh, remember I told you guys to put these things in here. Did I not do it? I told you to put, this should be wrapped just like that. Let's click out of there. Make sure it saves this time. Save. And then we'll just hit test and we'll just take that failed run. Right, this one that got stuck running, Flow does that every now and then, especially right now. I don't know, it isn't having a rough day. It's probably just my tenant. But anyway, if you get a flow that hangs up like that, just ignore it and rerun your test. All right, this failed again. What did you fail about this time? Oh, create item failed. All right, this is progress. String was not recognized as a valid date time. Oh, I actually knew this was going to happen. So what happens here was that, look up here in the body. So title came back as Shane Young. Hours they worked came back as 8. So that came back as a number. That's nice. Date they worked came back as a weird number. So, date they worked, right, is not a date. So the reason for this is because the Excel file actually sent the time over in ticks instead of the actual date like you were expecting. Ugh. So what you got to do, you're going to go back down here to our create item. And so the date they worked, it can't be work date because work date is coming in as 43,000 some odd thing. So you're in luck. I spend all the time figuring this out. That's not fair. Daniel on my team figured this out for me. But I'm going to grab this formula. And so we're going to go over here and we're going to get rid of work date. And we're going to say, hey, I want to run this expression. And I'm going to paste it in. And so this expression, we're going to have to massage a little bit. But what we have to do is we have to turn the ticks that they provide into a number of days. And then we're going to add that to the date 1899 1230. Not asking questions. It's just what you add it to. And so let's see if we can fix up Daniel's formula here. So int And then items apply to each to. Hey, we're going to apply to each to. That's good. And then for our column name, oh, it is not that. What was it? It was, you guys probably remember better than I do. So, but I don't remember. Someone go cheat and look. Work date. That's the name of the column. So work date. And so then all the rest of this stuff just stays hard coded. This is how you add it. So if we say okay, and so what I'm going to do real quick is now that we've got that working, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say Control A, Control C. That's really hard for you guys to see. I know that you want to do it. Remember, if you're a subscriber to the curated library over on training.powerapps911.com, you can just download this flow. But if you're not, I want to help you out too because I like you guys also. So put that in as a comment, and so then it's real easy to read that, right? And the key is that you have to get the apply to each for the step you're on, and then work date is the name of my column with those little single quotes. So yeah, I know, I'm so nice. But I feel a lot better now, so we're going to say test. We're going to take the test that just failed, save and test again. Hey, success. And if we look, we can see that it created an item. And because we're doing the Shane Young filter, it only created one. That makes actual sense. So Excel import demo. Shane Young, hours they worked is 8. Date they worked is that. Type of work is hard. Yeah! No, you're probably not that excited. It's okay. So anyway, that is how you would then iterate through these things, right? You now have all the pieces. I have taught you all the things. I spent like a week and a half learning all this stuff and can then sit down to like a half-hour video. I should get a medal. Instead, you guys will tell me the video was too long. I'm sorry. But that's all the things that I wanted to kind of get you going with. The dynamic stuff, which is brand new to the whole world. And then, I mean, not the whole world, but everywhere I could find. And then this was just kind of those core things around thinking about OData and thinking about, what else? OData queries, pagination, working with dates, the fact that your numbers might come over as text instead of numbers, which is important to understand. And the way that you can see that is if you go over here, look at the output from running list rows present in a table. You see that hours work came over in quotes. So that's how I knew it was a text 8 instead of a number 8. And so that's why I used the float function or expression, which turned it into a number. And I used float because in my customer's example, they gave me things like 4.57. And so that was a float. If you only had whole numbers, then you could have used the integer function. And there you can see that's how I knew that work date came in as 43,912, which is the number of ticks. And so that was where that crazy expression that Daniel came up with let us work our way back through that. So, whew. All right, remember, you can go, if you're on curated content, go download this. Don't, for heaven's sake, don't recreate all these formulas again. If you have any questions, leave me comments below. Do you want to see me go deeper in the Excel thing? Is there other scenarios, things I haven't thought of? Love to hear them. This is how we learn together, but I thought this was a good video for very common scenarios. So I guess with all that, I'm just going to say thanks and have a great day. Before you go, be sure to click on the subscribe button over here so that way you'll be notified when new videos come out. If you need any help or you want to work together, whether your problem is big or small, check us out at PowerApps911. We do it all. I rhymed. Or if you're looking for more formal training offerings, we have those linked up here somewhere. So check them out. Thanks and have a great day.